This meeting will have a virtual workshop on redistricting next Monday at 6 p.m. That will be open to the public. It will be virtual to hopefully provide additional access opportunities for residents. After that, you'll have several in-person meetings, public hearings at your regular meetings. That'll be March 7th, March 21st, and on April 4th. Just to, again, provide you with some highlights from your initial assessment. As you all may recall, the maximum deviation between your districts was 21.88%. The allowable percentage is 10% maximum deviation. Your largest district was District D. Your least populated district was District C. And the ideal district size is about 18,797 people. Again, you all established criteria at the last meeting. This proposed map incorporates that proposed criteria. We, kind of the most important, I think, is that you all wanted to ensure that your neighborhoods were in, all of the neighborhood was in one district. So in order to accomplish that, and this slide just includes a few highlights, not all of the changes, but kind of the significant highlights. Hunters Glen 4 and 5 were moved to District A. All of Creekmont, the Creekmont subdivision was placed in District B. All of Olympia Estates was also placed in District B. As you all may recall, there was a little segment of that was located in District D. New Point Estates and Shipman's Cove, which is a new neighborhood, were also moved to District B. Lakeshore Harbor was moved to District B. Quill Village Townhomes, Quill Valley North, Lexington Place, and Bermuda Dunes Villas were all moved to District C. And Oyster Creek Farms was moved to District D. So those are the highlights. As you can see from the map before you, this is the full kind of picture of your proposed map, Plan A. The red line indicates your current district boundaries. The colors represent each of the new proposed boundaries. You can see District A in blue, District B in green, District C in red, and District D in pink. This slide simply provides you all with just a summary of the details and the population breakdowns within each district. You'll note between this page and the existing numbers that they are not significantly greater. And again, the total deviation here meets the legal requirements of being below 10%. So with that, next steps are to receive written comments from the public. IT has assisted in creating a dedicated email address for comments related to redistricting. That email address is mcredistricting@missouricitytx.gov. The communications team is also assisting us by preparing a website that will include this information and other information related to the future public hearings and the process. Again, the next step in this process will be to hold a virtual workshop for the public next Monday via WebEx at 6 p.m. Are there any questions?
Okay, Joyce, before we go to the question, is there a motion for discussion purposes only? I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. It's been a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Boney, second by Councilmember Morales. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Now is the time open for questions. Hey, Joyce, can you go back to that map one more time?
Yes, sir.
Is there a way to zoom that?
There's not. This is a static.
Okay, go back to the one more slide. So those were all the changes?
These are the significant changes. They're not all of the changes, but they're some of the kind of the larger neighborhoods. I think some of the most noticeable changes probably for the council team.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Joyce, I have a question.
It's Anthony. Some districts stand to grow, right? We have a lot of expansion going on and some are built out. And I think C for the most part is built out. In these projections, do we have some cushion there for that? So like, for instance, Councilmember Boney's district's going to get a lot more homes, right? So does that maybe mean that maybe C could get more now? And then when he grows, we're equal? Is there a cushion in that?
There isn't cushion, the redistricting process is based on looking back, not looking forward. So the numbers are actually based on the 2020 census. And so
Okay.
that's really the basis from which the districts, that neighborhoods have been moved. It's based on those past numbers and not based on, for example, Shipman's Cove, I
Right.
don't think is built out, and that's in B. So I'm sure that will add
So no
population,
forecasting.
but no, not based on forecasting.
Can we, or should we, or does that happen normally?
And Mr. Heath is here, so he can provide a little background on that.
Which thank you. Which district were you saying is the one where significant growth is anticipated?
B?
B?
So B
All
is
right.
current.
It is slightly underpopulated, not dramatically so. That's something I think you can consider, but you have to come within the 10% deviation using the 2020 census. And the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that even though we know that the census gets out of date, and in fact, it's already out of date because it was taken almost 2 years ago, you assume that that's the number for the next decade. And that's the Reynolds versus Sims case says that, which is probably from the 1970s, and that has continued to be the law. So, if the council decided, well, we want to make that particular district a little smaller, you can do it, but you have to come within the 10% deviation using the 2020 census. And it gets a little harder to do that if you're trying to preserve neighborhoods, simply because you have less flexibility, if you're moving a whole neighborhood at a time.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it answers my question. I'm not sure if it addresses the growth, but it answers the question.
All right.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have more of a concern. For District A, you've made it to where it's predominantly Hispanic and African American. I've lost a lot of my diversity with the white population and Asian population, where you moved out Bermuda Dunes, Quail Valley North, Lexington Place, and moved them into District C.
Well, it is, I think actually when I left today, I picked up an earlier version of the initial assessment that didn't have some of the limited purpose in, but the numbers I'm looking at, you're correct that the Anglo population is a little less, the Asian population is a little less, but they are not significantly different than what they were. I think probably a percentage point or two. So, as you do that, it's always going to end up a little different than it used to be. But there are changes. I wouldn't say they're significant, but obviously you're the one that makes that decision.
Yes, I mean, I see that you're basing it on percentages. I'm basing it on relationships for neighborhoods. And since these have been in this district for decades, and I've been able to build relationships with these particular communities, it's not about percentage, but more so about the residents in their communities and how they connect with one another as well. And so it does minimize my diversity in District A and makes it predominantly Hispanic and African American, which is fine. but it does need to include some diversity. So I would ask that you would reevaluate those particular neighborhoods and see how you can make it more diverse.
Okay. Thank you. And I will also depend on input from city staff because they're more aware of the neighborhoods and such. The subdivision map that we have, it shows like 600 subdivisions because it's very diverse. And I think that's not what you're looking for. Not very diverse, very detailed. You know, you're looking at the larger neighborhoods.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
So that's where the local input really helps. And obviously, the council is the one that makes the ultimate decision. It's what it ought to be, not me.
Well, maybe
Well,
if you
well,
present
you know,
an
whatever y'all
alternative
say.
map for the residents when they are providing their input, if they only see one option and they feel that there aren't any other options, maybe you can do multiple maps so that people can select which map of redistricting they would prefer.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's the residents are picking the map, right? They're making suggestions and council's voting on it, right?
That is correct, but if you all would like to have other options that work within the legal principles as well as the adopted criteria, we can certainly attempt to come up with another version of the map. But just to follow up a little bit on what Mr. Heath said, the actual difference between the current numbers and the proposed numbers for the non-Hispanic white population, it goes from 8.52% to 6.89. So it's probably, I mean, it's about 1%. It is not a significant decrease in that particular population. But what we can do as well, I would think, is look at some of those neighborhoods that you mentioned to see if we can identify the types of folks, the demographics. We, of course, don't want to get too much into looking at or selecting people based on racial classifications, but we can certainly look at those neighborhoods to see if we can maybe put one or two back and change some of the bounds.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Joyce, I was just, I know Mayor asked if it could come out a little bit, but I was kind of just looking at B as it bumps up between D and A, and it looks like a portion of what used to be B is now in A off of Cartwright Road. And so I was just trying to figure out, is there a subdivision or two or more that is no longer in B there?
Can you repeat the description of the area for me?
Cartwright Road,
Okay.
looks like. I mean, I'm assuming that's Cartwright Road, based off, I can't really.
You're saying it is off of
Well, it looks like it's in A now, and I know you gave a proposed map A highlights, and you mentioned some of the ones that are being moved,
Yes.
but I'm looking here and it looks, I'm just saying, just based off of the way it looks. Because you mentioned earlier that,
Meadow Creek, are you looking at the Meadow Creek?
I don't know if that's what that is. I'm just asking. I'm trying to understand. I'm just looking at the map that's been given here, but
Or
Are
there,
you saying D to A or C to A?
or B to A?
B, I'm sorry.
So Hunters Point Estates, if you're looking at that green bubble at the top of B, the proposed B, I believe that's Hunters Point Estates. That would go to B under the new map. If you're looking at the blue, that's adjacent.
I'm not speaking about the bubble. I'm talking
Okay.
about right here, what it appears to be Cartwright Road.
Okay,
I'm thinking that's Cartwright Road.
if it's right kind of in the middle, that is Cartwright towards the top.
Right.
So
So,
that neighborhood is Meadow Creek. That was in B, that's going to A.
oh, it is.
That is Meadow Creek subdivision.
Oh, it is. Okay, because you didn't say that earlier. So
I only pulled out a few of the kind of highlighted areas. I didn't point out every single change.
okay. So I guess my thing is, are we gonna get that at the next meeting, or like the overall breakdown?
Sure, I can add, if you want me to go through and add each kind of each change, I can certainly do that for the presentation.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
I concur.
I have one more question, Joyce. I know there's a lot of data in the packet, but what about those registered voters in these, what about the registered voters in these districts? Where's that data and how does that compile on top of this data?
So in building districts for, to create a legally compliant redistricting plan, we don't look at the voters. We look at the actual population, which
Okay.
is what the census provides us those numbers on. So we're not looking at the actual voters. We can, I believe that we might have that information, but that would not be the basis for actually redistricting.
So,
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, just my experience in block walking, there's neighborhoods that have a predominantly, whether it be Asian or whatever nationality, and they don't vote, right? They're just here with residency or whatever. So I think that's an important number. I could have 18,000 people and maybe only 12,000 voters.
But how do you control that? I mean, what was your
I just like,
question?
my question is, can I see that data so I can overlap it to see that maybe my count is much higher and that maybe Councilmember Emery's is much lower now that we shifted all this?
Sure, we can certainly provide that information to you all.
Let me qualify what we can provide. There's some ways to do this. For example, we can provide the number of registered voters in every voting precinct. And of course, we'll get that information from Fort Bend County and Harris County. Now, this is going to split some precincts. So you don't know exactly how many of those are going to be in, say, District A versus District C or whatever. It is possible to have a fairly accurate count by geocoding all the voters. Now, in some counties, they're already geocoded. We can just take those and get that information. And by the way, I'm saying all this, when I talk to our GIS person, who is the technical person who does all this, she may say, well, that's not exactly right. But I know that in the past, we have gone to geocode people, and it's more labor intensive and may involve additional expense. But once you get that, you're not going to know how many of those are Asian, how many are Anglo, so forth. You can know how many have Spanish surnames, because that's something that is kept. And of course, also that will produce a list that some of those will be suspense voters and some will not.
Okay.
Suspense voters being those that haven't voted in a while, and there's reason to believe that maybe they don't live there anymore, but they're still on the rolls.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had another question relative to how this is formulated. So we have to do so in a way that the map has to be, I want to use the word right, is it contiguous?
Yes.
Yes.
Contiguous, yeah.
So that means it doesn't look as if it's been cut up in a way that is nefarious, or that, you're cherry picking who you want, right?
Well, and that may be more compact, and contiguous would be that every part of the district has to be continuous. I mean, you can't put part of D down here in the south and another part up in the north with no connection between them.
Mhm.
But compactness would be that it's compact, that it's closer to a circle or square or something like that. But as a practical matter, you're not going to have something that measures very compact, because you look at District D and the boundaries of the city are not compact.
Mhm.
And it's got to follow the boundaries of the city. So D is very much non-compact, but there's no alternative to that, because the
So-
city's not compact.
So my other question is relative to how this is determined.
Mhm.
It's based off of the census blocks, right? Like,
Yes, sir.
and you can't break those up, or
Technically, it's possible to break them. And actually, I think we have broken two blocks or split two blocks in this map, but it was where there was zero population on one part of it and all the population was in the other. But a census block normally is going to be a city block, so it's pretty small. Now, if we look at some of these unusually shaped subdivisions, or sometimes around the golf course or all, where the streets aren't a grid because they're following golf holes, those blocks may be unusually shaped, but normally it's a city block. And so it's a pretty small unit. But if we split one and we're splitting population, we don't know how many are on one side of the split and how many are the other. We have to make estimates to figure that out.
My last question is this: based off of demographics, in this case, we're talking about race.
Yeah, you see.
What's the variation in percentages that would raise a red flag? I'm assuming with the Department of Justice or anyone else.
I don't think there's going to be any red flag here in this city. Obviously, table so it's easier to see. For a suit under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is the section that is still intact, Supreme Court hasn't struck it down. One of the things you have to show is that it is possible to draw a district where the minority group can constitute a majority in that district. You don't necessarily have to draw it that way, but you have to show that it's possible. Here, it is clearly possible to draw a couple of districts where there is an African-American majority, and in fact, there are two districts like that here. There is really not sufficient Hispanic population or Asian population that is sufficiently compact to do that, to draw a single district. And particularly with some racial or ethnic groups, there is a lower rate of citizenship or a higher rate of children below the voting age. And in the Fifth Circuit, which is where we are, it has to be citizen voting age population. So an African-American could bring a suit to say you've got to draw some African-American districts where they have the ability to control the district. That's certainly happened here. I can't, anybody can always sue, but nobody could sue and win, I don't think, in this case, because I think you have fully complied with the Voting Rights Act.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
My
you.
last comment. Just looking at this from a logical standpoint and without having the list of how y'all move the neighborhoods around from district to district, which Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Boney stated we need to have that whole list, because my concern is logistically when people are running for these particular offices, how it's scattered out. You don't live here, so you wouldn't know how these neighborhoods kind of line up. But just to kind of give you, in District A, Hunters Glen 1 and 2 sits on one side, and directly in front of that next neighborhood in front of it is Hunters Point Estate. When you go off to the left side, you have Hunters Glen 3, 4, and 5, which are in District B. And then you cross over Texas Parkway, Hunters Green West is then District A. So if you're suggesting to move Hunters Glen 4 and 5, which is parallel to Hunters Glen 1 and 2 into District A, leave Hunters Glen 3 in District B, right across the street, move Hunters Point Estates into B, then you cross the street and we're back in A. It doesn't logistically make any sense to have one section that is District A, cross the street, you have District B, cross the street again, and then you have District A again. those neighborhoods are all right there tight knit.
And so one thing we were also looking at, though, was the actual makeup of those neighborhoods. So like Hunters Glen 4 and Hunters Glen 5 actually have separate homeowners associations, and
Mhm.
Hunters Glen 3 has a separate homeowners association. So when we were looking at, or when I was letting Mr. Heath know about the neighborhoods and the traditional neighborhoods in the city, I was looking at deed restrictions and items for which an HOA president would go to a member, hopefully one member, and say, you know, this is what we need. So we weren't just necessarily looking at location, but just the actual makeup of the HOAs and the neighborhoods. So even though they're Hunters Glens, or different segments of Hunters Glens, because they're separate, that's why we thought that it was okay to separate them.
I understand where you're coming from. I completely disagree because it just logically doesn't make any sense. You have Hunters Glen 1 and 2 in District A, and then you have 4 and 5 in District A, and then you have 3 left in B, and then you take out Hunters Point Estate, which is right in back of Hunters Glen 1 and 2. If you look at it from a map standpoint, it doesn't make sense. And then you cross right across the street, and you're now back in Quail Green West, which is District A. When all those neighborhoods on that side are all District A, and now you're gonna switch them all up. And so it's like A, B, A, B.
Yeah,
And it's not a
Sorry, were you-
perfect, oh, go ahead.
were you done, Council?
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I'm just looking, I wish I could really blow this map up, but I don't see, because what this looks like to me is that, because I know where Hunters Point Estate is, this doesn't look like Hunters Point Estates is in this green bubble at the top here. And I do understand that we have to have kind of the numbers even out as much as they can to meet the 18,797 ideal size. So, I mean, I kind of understand that, but I understand what Councilwoman Riley is saying, but in looking at this map, I don't see that that's inclusive of Hunters Point Estates, which is why I was asking about the actual movement of all the subdivisions to see.
And it is. And it actually is, part of your packet includes a breakdown of each of the districts and the maps of each of the districts. And at the top of the green bubble is Lexington Boulevard, and Pine Hollow Drive is just south of that, and Grand Park Drive also goes through that. So I do believe that's Hunters Point because it's at about Texas Parkway and Lexington Boulevard.
Hunters Point Estate sits right where the proposed gas station is.
Right, and that's included in the green.
But that's what you're stating in your earlier statement, that you're moving to B.
Correct. I was clarifying that with Mayor Pro Tem Boney, that it is included in B.
Yeah, I'd like to see the full blown up map to better understand it.
Okay.
Is that something that can be presented, Mayor Pro Tem's request at the meeting, the virtual meeting?
Yes, ma'am. And on February 28th, we can certainly include that, but it is also included in it is included in the packet where you can actually blow that up and see that. I wish I could bring my computer over to you to show you that segment, but it's included there.
Right, you know, there are individual maps of each district, which is going to be a bigger view than what you have there. But on the computer, you can blow those up to 200%, 400%, zoom in,
Oh, I see
get
it.
more detail.
I found it.
So again, Mr. Heath, I would like to see an optional map based on my concerns and the comments that I made.
Okay, and if the city attorney can help me pull that together, we'll get that for you.
Joyce, I have a question. I know you stated that we're going to have our virtual workshop. What is your marketing plan to make sure the residents understand the district changes and how it will actually impact them during election time? What's your plan for that?
So I'm working with the communications team to further develop that. At this point, it would include press release information going out. That would include a link to the website, which includes all of the information on their current districts, as well as the proposed plans, as well as the process for them to participate and provide comment.
Okay, so do you only project only having one virtual workshop?
At this point, there's only one virtual workshop included in the kind of the timeline, but you all would have the opportunity, and I've included that in the timeline as well, for public participation via at least 3 public hearings for people to come in and present information.
Okay, I would recommend that you do some type of tour and connect with the resource liaison and present these type of changes to each HOA if you can. I mean, I know it's going to be kind of hard considering the employees in your department, but it's just some type of way that you can introduce the changes and ask any questions to the residents and just kind of be hands-on and more accessible, considering everybody might not participate in the virtual component or might not even know what's going on.
Okay.
Well, Joyce, before you say okay to that, that means what Councilmember Edwards is asking is every single HOA, because there's tons of changes in D to B, right? So before you say okay to it, I mean, I think you having maybe 1 or 2 virtual meetings, I mean, it's impossible for us to get to every single HOA and who the management company is and then go through it and send them this and saying, are you okay with this? It's not going to happen. I don't see how, if you're giving us a deadline to it. I mean, that's why we have, maybe we do not just 1, maybe 2 or 3 virtual. This way HOAs and the management companies or whoever it is that be able to come in either. Now, if it's virtual, they don't even have to come in. They can see it through at their palm of their, their hand, whether it's a, phone or computer or iPad. But to go to every single HOA, we don't even know when those meetings are taking place and then saying this is what the change is. I mean, you're talking between 4 districts. There's so many HOAs. That'll take months.
I don't necessarily think it's impossible. I think if you spread it out amongst your staff members and everyone have a certain amount to meet, or another option could be an A, B, and C community meeting where you can cluster up the HOAs, have Kelly to coordinate those individual HOAs and have just community meetings encouraging them and informing them of the changes. I mean, if that's going to be a problem, you go into each one of them, I think that component would be a little more efficient.
Okay, I can certainly look at the various proposals and come up with something that provides the public with additional opportunities to comment.
Joyce, maybe we can have some maps in the art area here of proposed maps and people can freely come in and out and perhaps leave a note or email at that email address you provided. And then that way you give everybody an opportunity to come in and kind of put their finger on their address and say, okay, this is what's going on.
Regardless of whatever you choose, Joyce, I think it's very important if we specify and hold onto our marketing component. Maybe some nice colorful flyers, and just engaging the community and letting them know what's going on. Because voting matters and it's important that they know who their representatives are and due to the changes.
Thank you all for your comment.
I just want to add to Councilmember Edwards and Maroulis to make sure we have a list of what those subdivisions are. Everybody can't read a map, so just make sure that we have it in written form so that people can see their subdivision, where it stays, where it goes, or whatnot.
So will that be part of the virtual also?
Yes, sir.
So anywhere we're putting this out there, so we'll have that information also on it. So people know because I've noticed there's a lot of changes from, a lot of D went to B, right? So similar to what we're talking about here, and then those neighborhoods also need to know
Correct.
what changes and who and where.
Correct.
Okay. Joyce, is there a timeline, drop dead definitive date that this has to be completed?
Yes, May 2022, as you can see from the.
May what, 2022?
I don't have the exact
Oh.
date in front of me, but the second reading of the ordinance adopting the boundaries is set for April. Oh. Go back to
April 18th.
April 18th.
So we definitely need to move forward with this proposed timeline.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to just ask the city manager, I know, we're talking a lot about things that are relative to communications and marketing and employees. Logistically, city manager, is what's being asked or proposed possible, or what the best possible path forward is to make sure we have adequate communication out to the citizens?
Well, I think logistically, we definitely can send out an email blast to those HOAs with the information, offer them an opportunity for somebody to come speak to them if they want to be spoke to, and provide as much information as we can through that avenue and through the avenues that we have to everybody. And maybe, I know Joyce has got the virtual town halls, but we may even look at one live town hall, or have an afternoon here at City Hall where we have the maps up in this room. And if anybody wants to come in and ask questions, they can come and ask questions. And we'll sit there and try to answer their questions at that time. And just get the maps up next door. I think that's having the maps up someplace where people can start looking at them is a good idea. And make sure that we just have information for people if they want to come in and see it.
And even to that other point, even after it's been finalized, there's still communication that needs to take place, right? I mean, not just for us considering it, but I think once the city council vote on it and move forward, there's still be substantial amount of communication that needs to go out, because if there are changes within districts, people need to know.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no doubt there's going to be changes. And that's in a growing city. Anytime you redistrict, there's always going to be changes. When your city's stagnant, you'll finally get to the point that there's not. So there'll be changes this time. There'll be changes again in 2030, and there may even be changes in 2040. But yeah, getting information out after, because there will be people that they don't necessarily, they're not going to have a big concern as to what district they're in. But then after it's over, they may be voting in a different place. They may have a different polling location, whatever. So getting information out, and up to the election, right before the election, we'll have to have another big push with getting information out for people to understand what district they're in and where they need to go vote.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I don't think your microphone's on. It's hard to hear you. All right, if there are no other discussions, then we're going to go ahead and move forward. Okay, item number 2B, discussion and possible action on the naming of a 3.83 acre future park located in the Park's Edge subdivision. We have a presentation by Mayor Pro Tem Jeffrey L. Boney.
Yeah, so Mayor, at the last council meeting, I presented the city secretary with a letter actually proposing that the new Lake Olympia residential development, land that was donated, 3.83 acres, that's being built where Park's Edge is right now. It needs a name. And I felt that it was no one better to actually have that park named after than Randy Troxel, who spent over 30 years here with the city. A little bit about Randy. He worked in the Parks Department for 30 years prior to retiring as Assistant Director in October of 2020. During his tenure, he saw the population jump from 36,262 to 75,457 and worked tirelessly to ensure that the city's park system kept up with the rising population. Randy was involved in the acquisition, design, or development of half of Missouri City's 22 parks and the Recreation and Tennis Center. Randy Troxel viewed his work as a labor of love and was often seen on the weekends picking up trash in the parks, watering trees during a dry spell, or talking to residents. To this day, Randy is known to be an encyclopedia of Missouri City knowledge, and all who enjoy the city's parks can feel his legacy. And I felt it was appropriate to submit to the Parks Department, or to the City Secretary's office, to submit to the Parks Department the name either Randy Troxel or Troxel Park for consideration. And I was happy to hear that the Parks Board, not Parks Department, the Parks Board actually unanimously approved it being named after him, and that's what's before us today.
So is that your motion?
Yes, so moved, sir.
What, we need to identify what the exact name.
I would like to name the 3.83 acre future park located in the Parks Edge subdivision after Randy Troxel, and for it to be named Troxel Park.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, go on.
So I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Boney, second by Councilmember Clauser. Is there a discussion?
Yes, I have a question for you, Jason. How in the past how have we pretty much decided what our park's name's gonna be? What was that process?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
In the past and previous namings of the parks, what was that process of deciding how the parks' names are gonna be decided?
This will be the first park that we've named since I've been here. So we do have a naming ordinance, which is chapter 16 of the Code of Ordinances. And it explains how to go about it. And we did check that and make sure that the outline process was followed.
Can you summarize that ordinance? I'm not.
Yep, so if a council member would like to name a building or a park, they submit a request to the city secretary's office. The city secretary then forwarded it onto our department. Then it was placed on the Parks Board agenda for a public hearing and a positive recommendation. That happened a couple of weeks ago at our last Parks Board meeting on the 10th. And the Parks Board provided a unanimous positive recommendation to forward that to the City Council. So ultimately, it's City Council's responsibility to name streets, parks, buildings, programs based on this process. And that process has been followed.
Sure. I absolutely think that that's great, but I do think as the Parks Department, as well as my colleagues and I, should go the extra mile by having some type of survey given to the community and allowing them to have some type of input, considering they are the taxpayers and they will be the ones ultimately utilizing that property. And so I don't want to make it seem like, it's our opinion only and that the community doesn't have any input. But I do think that that's an important component that needs to be implemented.
So as stated, Councilmember Edwards, by the Parks Director, a public hearing was held, an agenda was posted, and so anyone in the community did have an opportunity to chime in on this potential name change. And so there was no feedback of objection or consideration of a different name. And so that's why it was unanimously approved by the Parks Board, and now it's before us today.
Right, I understood everything that he stated, but I do think it's important for us to engage the community. A lot of our residents don't come to Parks Board meetings, they don't come to the City Council meetings, but also for us to go to them and engage them by social media platforms. It's important for them to understand different name changing and different things that are going on in the community, considering they're the ones that are funding this project with their taxpayers' money. So again, I believe it's great that public hearings are held, but I do believe we need to do our due diligence by ultimately engaging the community and meeting them where they are.
And just so you know, this project is not being funded by taxpayer dollars. It's being funded by Park Zone money. 100% donation by the developers.
Okay.
So,
Developers.
yep.
So
Thank you.
call the question, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for nominating Randy. Having served on the Parks Board, watching him do so much for our community, this is very commendable. So I appreciate you doing that. Following the process, the Parks Board voted on it. They probably pushed it out to get feedback. So thank you.
All right.
And congratulations to Troxels, considering we all approve on this.
Okay. We had a couple of questions by Mayor Pro Tem Boney.
No, I said I was just called a question. I was calling for us to vote, in essence. I was calling for the vote.
Okay.
One question. I think what you said is that in going through this naming process, we followed all of the requirements that are laid out in the whatever the city procedures are for the naming of parks or buildings.
Correct. It's in the
Okay.
Code of Ordinances, chapter 16, I believe, and we followed it as outlined. And it's not the only way to name a park. There are many ways that outlined. This is one of the ways to do it, and we followed it as outlined.
Well, I think by following it and wanting to name it after Randy Troxel is appropriate from my standpoint, because I've seen him work, over 11 years that I've been here, and he was, what I consider Mr. Parks. So, thank you.
Jason, I did understand you said that it was donated, the funding will be donated by developers.
Yeah, and actually, that's the next item on the agenda. I'm actually going to show the proposed design, but the
Can we,
land.
excuse me, can we just not stick to that the agenda item? Let's just talk
Yep.
about this and vote on it. We need to move forward.
Yep.
We'll get to that one because that's already on the agenda, right?
It is.
We are in discussion, correct?
It is on the discussion, but you're discussing an item that's next on the agenda. So
Right.
if you have a comment, go ahead.
You're right. I just had a point. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so I know you stated that it will be funded by developers and donations, but maintenance for the park will be funded by the taxpayers' dollars, correct? So that, again, the taxpayers are included some type of way, and again, I think that they should have some type of input in the naming.
All right. Any other discussions? Okay. There's been a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Boney, second by Councilmember Clauser. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion, please say no.
No.
Okay, motion carries 6-1. Item 2C is to receive a presentation on Parks Edge Parkland Conceptual Design, presentation by Jason Mangum, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Okay, just real quick, I'd like to just present to you the design of newly named Troxel Park. A little bit of background, this is a 3.8 acre park. It was donated in 2002 as part of the Lake Olympia residential subdivision. That land changed hands several times since 2002 and then was recently part of the Parks Edge subdivision. The Parks Board approved the Parkland dedication from Parks Edge in June 1st, 2017. And that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission also the same year. We hired KGA DeForest to design this park because they're the ones that did the landscape architecture for the Parks Edge subdivision. And I thought it was really important to make sure that if we designed a park that was located within this subdivision, that it flowed with the current amenities that subdivision have. I didn't want to duplicate things, and I wanted to make sure that it really had the amenities that the entire city needs, because it's an entire city park, but also that it fit within the subdivision where it resides. The developer was incredibly gracious and easy to work with on this, and they made several concessions that they didn't have to make. For example, providing us access to the parkland. They could have just built houses all the way up against it, so we had no access. I'll get into some of the others. We conducted a tree survey in August 2021 to see what kind of tree species were on the site. The design was presented to the Parks Board last August, and we did have a public outreach meeting where we pushed the information out. And we had several families stop by to provide their input on the park design. And so today wanted to present this design to you. This is an overview of the park. Just a little bit of reference. If you follow the bayou, that's Mustang Bayou. If you follow that red arrow on the map, that would take you up to the Bridge Community Park. This is an overview. There's several a small park. So there's a playground, a couple of shade areas, and then a couple of areas for outdoor games, and then some areas for sitting and contemplating. This is just another example of something. This will overlook the piece of property that's on the other side of the bayou, which is also part of this park. Just some of the images of what we'll have there. This will be something where we'll have some concrete outdoor games. So some places for people to gather and play where you don't need a lot of people. If you have a small group, you can play some of these outdoor games. They're made for parks. And then just kind of an overview. The road is Diantho. That's the subdivision left open for us. And then another concession that they made is they agreed to connect our park to the bridge that connects over to Community Park. So this park will actually have a pathway along the bayou up to the bridge that connects over into Community Park. So it's really a nice network for the park system. That's really just the overview of the park design, and wanted to get any input or comments you guys might have.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been a motion by Councilmember Emery, second by Councilmember Marulis. Is there discussion?
I have a question, Jason. I see that there are only 10 parking spaces there. What is the plan for overflow parking?
Yeah, because it's only 3 acres, it's a really small park. A lot of our parks that says don't even have any parking. When we looked at that, the landscape architect felt that 10 spaces was plenty.
So when those 10 fill up, where will?
They could
people
park along Diantha Street as well because they could be street parking there.
Okay. And then my second question is, I see that there's a covered pavilion. Will that be on a first come, first served basis, or will residents have to rent the pavilion out?
We haven't made that decision. We're just looking at the design right now, but we'll have 2 covered. So one might be available for rentals where the other one might be a first come, first served.
Okay.
Any other questions? Have a comment, don't need to answer to me. I just want to say thank you for doing this. Randy, I've served on Parks Board before getting on City Council, and I've seen the commitment from him and what he has done outside of what he's gone above and beyond. And I'm glad that you all went through the process, which the process that it entails within our ordinances to do so. So this way, even in the future, we have parks that are named throughout the city. If, council or if people want us to make those changes, they can follow our ordinances and make a comment. And that is my comment. Don't answer that.
I have one last question. Will the ping pong tables, will they have to bring their own paddles and balls, or will they be able to get those from the rec center?
Both.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
When we first build it, we'll probably put a bunch out there, expect them to get stolen. So just so people know that they can get out there and play. We've done that in other cities where I put those in, and it seems to work out well, and then it starts attracting people. And
Okay.
yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Bye.
All those opposed to the motion, please say no.
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Item number 3. Time is 6:25 p.m. and the city council will now go into an closed executive session pursuant to section 551.072 and 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. The time is 7:23 p.m. City Council is back in open session, reconvene. There's no motion from the executive session, so there are no other discussions. We're gonna go ahead and no other further business. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting.